Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Sarah Gallia. Today we are going to be talking about properties. So we're going to do a quick review, so you should pause at this part of the screen, complete this, and then bring this in tomorrow to have it checked. The essential question that we're going to be looking at are how are the field properties and properties of equality of real numbers used to solve equations. Before we get into the justifying piece, we're going to introduce you to some of the new properties of equalities you haven't seen before. The first is the addition property of equality. So for any real numbers, a, b, and c, if a is equal to b, then a plus c equals b plus c. So let's look at this example of a one-step equation. To solve this equation, we know we need to add 3 to both sides. So if I type this in here, let me just make it a little bit larger. So we have to take x minus 3, and we have to add 3 to that side. And then if we do it to one side, we have to add 3 to the other side. So by adding 3 to both sides of the equation, we solved it to get x is equal to 10. The next property will be the subtraction property of equality. So similar to the addition, but now we're just subtracting. So if we see down here, we have another one-step equation. So we know to solve for this variable x, we need to subtract 5 from both sides. So we take 8 and subtract 5, and then on the other side of the equal sign, we're going to take x plus 5 and then subtract 5. We can see that by doing that, if we take, we know that we have, I'm going to change that just a little bit. We have the subtracting 5 on that side, and then we also have the subtracting 5 on this side. So remember, we're keeping the equation balanced, we're keeping it equal. The next new property is the multiplication property of equality. So for any real numbers, a, b, and c, c cannot equal to 0. If a is equal to b, then a times c is equal to b times c. So if I give you an example, we have 8x, Alright, so here's the example. We have x divided by 8 equal to 2. So to solve for this variable, to get x by itself, we know we have to multiply both sides by 8. So we're going to multiply this side by 8 over here. Let me add in a bullet for multiplication. So we have to multiply this side by 8. And then I'm also going to go through and multiply this side by 8. Again, we're keeping the equation balanced. So we're multiplying this side by 8 and we're multiplying this side by 8. So we know that this equation is going to be x is equal to 16. So this is justified by doing the multiplication property of equality. The next one is division property of equality. So for any real numbers, a, b, and c, where c cannot equal to 0, if a is equal to b, then a divided by c equals to b divided by c. So again, in our example, we have 7 times x is equal to 28. So to solve this equation, we know we have to divide both sides by 7. So I'm going to put in a division bar for each side. Let me just move this down. There we go. So we have to divide this side by 7, and then we have to divide this side by 7. So if we want to solve this again, we know that x is going to be equal to 4. So right here we can see that we have dividing by 7 on both sides. Alright. Now this is where some new ones, they might be tricky at first, but we have the reflexive property. So any quantity is equal to itself. think of reflexive like your reflection. You see yourself in the mirror. So if we look at, for any number a, we know a is equal to a. So 5 is going to be equal to 5. And x plus 7 is going to be equal to x plus 7. The next one is symmetric. If one quantity equals the second quantity, then the second quantity equals the first. So for any numbers a and b, if a is equal to b, then b is equal to a. So if we look down here, we have 5 plus 7 is equal to 12. So we know 12 is going to be equal to 5 plus 7. And we have the transitive property. So for any numbers a, b, and c, if a is equal to b and b is equal to c, then a is equal to c. So if we look down here, we know 4 plus 7 is equal to 11. Then 11 is equal to 5 plus 6. We can come to the conclusion using the transitive property that 4 plus 7 has to be equal to 5 plus 6. Okay. And our last one is substitution. So if a is equal to b, then a may be replaced by b in any expression. We have seen substitution when we evaluate our expressions. We substitute a value in for a variable, and we're also going to be using this when we start justifying for solving our equations. So here, if n is equal to 11, then we know we're going to take n out and we're going to substitute 11. So it's going to become 4 times 11. Okay. Now try these next 4 problems. You're going to identify the property of equality that is shown. So make sure you remember to bring these in tomorrow when we go over them in class. So looking back at the essential question, how are the field properties and properties of equality of real numbers used to solve equations? We're going to look at that in our next video on justifying solving equations.